Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today I'll be speaking on the lessons that we derive from the honeybee. There is a chapter in the Quran called An-Nahl or the honeybee. And in this chapter there is a verse in which God says, "Your Lord inspired the bee, saying, make your homes, make your hives in the mountains, in the trees, and in the structures which men erect." So the honeybee is one of the very few creatures which the Quran mentions. And the way of the Quran is that it gives us hints and it gives us clues. And the rest is upon us to reflect, to study and observe and understand the deeper message that the Quran is trying to tell us. So if you study the honeybee, you will realize that the honeybee is an astoundingly intelligent creature and it is perfectly fashioned. Scientists say that the honeybee is an architectural marvel and it has been given specialized anatomies to harvest nectar from the flower. And it is said that the design of the honeybee is a perfect fusion of form and function. And I will give you an example. The eye of the honeybee, it has two compound eyes, and these compound eyes have 6,900 lenses. And the eyes are covered with sensory hairs for detecting wind speed. And this is not enough. The honeybee has 3 additional eyes for detecting light signals so that it helps them in orientation. So if we reflect and we study the creation of God, it will help us in appreciating the wisdom of God and the intelligence and the glory of God. And this is what is known as tadabbur or contemplation. Now, another very important lesson which we learn from the honeybee is that the honeybee is a very, very beneficial member of society. So the Quran tells us that a human being should be a giver member of society. And this model has been established by God in nature as well. And the honeybee is an exemplified version of this example. So what does the honeybee do? It is said that the honeybee is one of the very important pollinators in the world. So 1/3 of the food in the US is pollinated by the honeybee. And how does the honeybee achieve this? So the entire body of the honeybee is coated by sensory feathers. And these feathers build up a static charge as the honeybee flies. And when the honeybee rests on the flower, then the pollen literally jumps onto its body due to the electric charge which is attracted to its body. And when it gets the pollen, it transfers to different flowers and aids the process of pollination. So this is a very important lesson that the honeybee gives us, which is of being a giver member of society and not demanding anything in return. And another very important lesson which the honeybee imparts to us and which I found extremely amazing was that in this particular situation in which we are these days, the honeybee is a very good guide for us because we have been asked to stay under lockdown. We are asked to self-isolate and not move out or interact with people. So the honeybee also does something very similar when it falls sick. So when the bees are ill, they sacrifice themselves and they leave their hives so that they do not infect other members of the colony. As the colony contains hundreds and thousands of bees, so if one bee is ill, others can also fall ill. And to prevent that scenario, the honeybees leave and abandon their hive. So they sacrifice themselves. So this is a very important lesson which the honeybee teaches us. And it performs the ideal, the human ideal of being a harmless member of society in the most consummate manner. So the Prophet of Islam had once said that a true believer is a person who does not harm others. A true believer is a person from whom people are safe. And I think the honeybee has set an example in nature, or God has set an example in nature for human beings, so that we can take guidance from this example and understand that we also have to live as harmless creatures in society. We have to be harmless people for our fellow human beings. Lastly, I would like to share another very surprising feature about the honeybee, which took me by great surprise. It completely baffled me. And it was that when a honeybee discovers that there is a lot of pollen somewhere out there, then it returns to its hive and it tells other members of its colony or its hive. It communicates this information to other members of the hive. And how does it do that? It does that through a special dance, and that dance is called a waggle dance. So in this dance, movements and sounds are encoded through a particular dance that the honeybee does, and it conveys to the other members of the colony where the pollen is, how far or how distant the pollen is from the hive, or in which direction the pollens are from the hive. So this is a very intelligent example of how the honeybee works in cohesion with other members of its colony. And another very short example from the honeybee, which I would like to share, is that the honeybee travels 3 miles in search of flower and in search of pollen. So when it returns, it very surprisingly returns to exactly the same hive. It will never return to another hive. So this gives us a very nice and a very intelligent example of how we have to be devoted to our task. We have to be single focused, hardworking, and very dutiful. And another thing which the honeybee tells us through this great example which it has set is that we human beings have to differentiate between the unpleasant and the pleasant aspects of our lives. Because when the honeybee goes to fetch nectar from the flower, it does not focus on anything except the flower. It only lands on the flower. It does not focus or concentrate on the stem, on the root, or on the fruit. It only looks at the flower. So this is a very important principle which we have to adhere to in our own lives, because if we do not remain focused on our work, then we will often get engrossed in things which are not related to our work. For example, the honeybee does not fight against the thorn. It does not go about protesting to the thorn and telling the thorn, why do you exist, and why are you creating unpleasant why are you creating an unpleasant environment for me. Rather, it only goes to the flower, does its work, and returns home. So our journey through life has to be like this. We will inevitably face negativities. We will inevitably face unwanted experiences. We will have experiences of hurt, of pain, of grief, but we don't have to have ourselves engrossed in that. We should not dwell on that. Rather, we have to only focus on the positive side of things and also perform the duty that has been entrusted upon us by God. So this is a wonderful example that the honeybee has set in nature. It is really, as scientists have said, a marvel of nature. And this shows why really the Quran has mentioned the honeybee. Rather, it has given the name of an entire chapter as the honeybee. So we have to reflect on the Quran, the teachings of the Quran. We have to do tadabbur and tawassum and understand why at all God has given the various injunctions which He has given in His book. And this is what will actually help us in developing our minds, understanding the Quran and making it more relevant to our lives today. Thank you.